David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us.
Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew.
Meeting of the Santa Fe County Board of County Commissioners to order on January 23rd. And can I have a roll call?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anna Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Justin Green.
Here.
Commissioner Anna Hansen. And what would we like to mark Commissioner Bustamante? Excused. Okay. And then Chair Hank Hughes.
Present.
You have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Manager Schaefer, are there any changes to the agenda that we have?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Hansen, a second by Commissioner Green. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. That brings us to discussion and potential action items about the second session of the 56th Legislature, updates and potential action to express support for or opposition to legislation that has been or may be introduced. Various staff who would like to start.
Thank you, Madam. You can call me Catherine, and I'll call you Madam. Mr. Chair, just wanted to explain a little bit how we got to this point in time. The commissioners had requested an opportunity to weigh in on pieces of substantive legislation, and so we scheduled this special session. You can really manage it as you see fit. What we tried to do at the staff level in order to make sure that the board had information was to solicit from individual commissioners in advance bills that you were interested in discussing. So the ones that were identified for us by Friday at noon, we included packet material to include some analysis either from elected officials or from staff, as well as the bills themselves. So I believe that Sarah Smith included in board docs a proposed order of bills. So if there's no objection from the board, we'll just proceed in that manner. And I believe that the first bill that was identified was House Bill 127, and our sheriff and undersheriff are both present to address that.
That sounds fine to me. I don't see any objection from the other commissioners, so Sheriff Mendoza, go ahead and give us your comments.
Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners, we're here to, we asked for some input in reference to House Bill 127, which is one of several gun safety measures that are going to be proposed in the legislature this year. And, I will tell you, as a sheriff, as an elected official, law enforcement officer, some of these issues in reference to gun safety can become very delicate. There is a lot of contention in reference to how it relates to the Second Amendment, but it also relates to safety and public safety and welfare for our communities, for Santa Fe County, and for the state of New Mexico. Looking at and talking with other sheriffs across the state and talking about some of the gun legislation that's going to be proposed, when I saw this come up, I think, you know, as the sheriff, I have to weigh my personal feelings about Second Amendment and gun safety and gun bills versus public safety. And with the rise of violent crimes, where a firearm is utilized, you have to consider, you know, what's safe for the community and what's better for the state of New Mexico and what's best for Santa Fe County, and how can these bills impact how we do our job as law enforcement officers and how we maintain safety throughout our county. In looking at several of these bills, I will tell you that House Bill 127 is a bill that I think I can support as the sheriff, and that I would suggest that the board support in general. You know, as an avid, I can talk as an avid outdoorsman, a hunter, a rancher. You know, there were some concerns that this bill may affect the youth that may be wanting to get involved in hunting or outdoors or shooting sports, and I think this bill actually addresses a lot of those concerns, and there's a lot of exceptions in the bill that I think address a lot of my concerns personally, and address concerns for youth and people that may be interested in sports and outdoors type activities. One of the things that we did recognize is that, and I'll have the undersheriff talk to this, is the current regulations and laws when it comes to handguns. And so this bill, to me, addresses semi-automatic firearms, which could include long guns, rifles, and pistols. And I'll let the undersheriff talk to this, but we realize that state law is a little bit more restrictive when it comes to handguns and doesn't address revolvers, which aren't semi-auto. Those are single pull firearms. But I'll have the undersheriff talk to that and kind of what is not addressed in this bill, and which I think it should be. And so I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners, I think the important thing to realize here is that, like the sheriff said, a revolver is a pistol that can be possessed by an individual, according to the law, that's 19 and above. So they can still possess the weapon. They can't go purchase it because you have to be 21 in the state of New Mexico to purchase a pistol. So, but they can still possess it. And it doesn't seem to make sense, but that's what the law says. So I think if that one aspect could be addressed, and I think all handguns should be 21 to possess. So I think that would be an option that would benefit everyone. If there's any questions.
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Sheriff and Undersheriff, for being here. I appreciate this. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I want to support what you're saying. And so what I'm hoping is by us supporting this, that it will also help our lobbyists to lobby over at the Roundhouse on this behalf to get the bill changed. It's not too late to make these changes, and I think that as a county that is progressive and that recognizes the effects of handguns on our citizens, that it should be consistent. And so I'm wholeheartedly in support, and if there's not anybody else, I'll make a motion to support and we can have under discussion, but if that's all right, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think we're going to do all of these by motion, so if you want to make a motion, go ahead.
So I move to support House Bill 127 and with the recommendations that Sheriff Mendoza and Under Sheriff Johnson have made, that we lobby on that behalf.
Thank you.
And specifically, I'll second it, and specifically those were to limit the possession of revolvers to those over 21 years of age. Is that correct? No, to limit possession to over.
Okay.
Or to make it illegal to possess any handgun. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. And that's my second, and yep, for clarity.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, Sheriff and Under Sheriff, you have your endorsement.
All right, well, thank you. We appreciate getting some input into, how Santa Fe County supports legislation, especially when it comes to public safety issues.
Oh, and thank you for analyzing the bill and giving us a good overview. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Sheriff, so much for being here and taking the time to come. That means a lot to us. Thank you, Under Sheriff, also.
And if I may?
Commissioner Green.
Thank you. And Sheriff, as I've learned over in the Roundhouse, do the homework ourselves, right? If you see in this bill where you would change a word or a passage to say it's easy, it's these 3 words to any firearm or any handgun to the 21 years, those corrections make life a lot easier. So don't, right now, everything needs to, we need to, if we want to change those words, we should have the corrected words, and then we can go present it to the sponsors and see if they're willing to accept it, or they're going to tell us very quickly, there's too much pushback on this, it won't go, let's just see if this is good enough. So since you've read it and I've read it now too, we should go look and find those specific words as limited as possible to have our recommendations in there.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and I think, looking at every instance, the revolvers and how everything, there's nothing worse than a bill that doesn't cover, the issues or different aspects of the law, and so if it's done properly, it's more, I think it's accepted more broadly and enforced more broadly. So the clearer, more concise, and I think the bill is the better.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll go to whatever's next, which looks like Jordan. Go ahead. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. Good afternoon. The first bill that I will be speaking to today is House Bill 25, which aims at making housing discrimination based on a renter or buyer source of income an unlawful or discriminatory practice. And it attempts to do so by amending the New Mexico Human Rights Act. So Section 28-1-7G1 of the Human Rights Act is currently the section of that statute that prohibits housing discrimination. And right now it covers a number of areas to include protected classes that are pretty commonly seen in fair housing legislation, such as religion, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. This bill proposes to amend that section to include source of income, which would make it discriminatory for someone selling or renting a house to deny access to that transaction solely based on a renter's source of income. Source of income, as described in the bill, is relatively broad. It covers all types of source of income, but one that's probably most applicable, and it's something that Santa Fe County deals with directly, is public assistance. So that would be federal, state, or local public assistance in terms of rental assistance, and that's primarily administered via vouchers. So the changes to this bill aren't substantial, but I will state that we, from the Housing Authority perspective, this is an issue that we see on a regular basis. As this board is well aware, one of the largest federal programs that the county operates is the voucher program that's administered through the Housing Authority. And it is not uncommon through that process to, when we conduct landlord orientation or outreach, to have landlords explicitly state that they do not lease to renters who are coming to the table to rent the unit with a voucher. Now, that being said, there may still be other reasons for not leasing to a voucher holder. Landlords or property management companies may have other priorities or processes, such as criminal background checks, rental history. But this bill in particular would prohibit a landlord from discriminating solely due to the fact of a voucher or any other particular source of income. I would also state to the board that this particular item was also listed in County Resolution 23-120, which was passed late last year, outlining the BCC's priorities for affordable housing. Number 4 on the list of affordable housing items was enacting legislation to prevent source of income discrimination for rentals. House Bill 25 achieves that ends and also goes a little bit further to effectuate all types of housing transactions that may be applicable in the market. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Hamilton.
So just for clarity, you're not recommending any wording changes in particular, are you?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, no.
Right, thank you.
Well, this is something very near and dear to my heart and very important, and I'm glad we voted on it earlier in general. And I would entertain a motion on this if anybody cares to make one.
I will move to support House Bill 25.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, a second from Commissioner Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we've endorsed that one. I guess we will move on to Jacqueline.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Jacqueline Beam, Sustainability. And I am presenting on House Bill 41 first. And this bill is in alignment with the goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a minimum of 45% by 2030. It really focuses more on alternative fuels and encouraging the usage of and the market of alternative fuels. And it would allow fuel producers to use credits and trade credits based upon what's allowable. And they're changing from the 1970s rule to encourage lower carbon intense fuels. So it's also supported by the Coalition of Sustainable Communities. And we recommend that, anytime we're lowering carbon, it's a good thing. So we, as staff recommends. Yes, Commissioner.
So I'm kind of wondering why we're approving some of these bills that we've already approved earlier on. It's just a question, like we passed the resolution early on with the Coalition for Sustainability, and to me this would seem to fall under the broad resolution that we did pass earlier. So does someone want to tell me why we're approving these things again?
Madam Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, sorry, it'll take a second. If there is a specific bill, we want the board to see it in total, because you can outline a broad policy goal, but the devil is often in the details. And so by bringing forward the bills so that you can see them in total, that was the rationale, nothing more than that.
That's great, and I appreciate that for sure. But I just, believe this falls under our broader sustainability goals that we have already set for the commission and that we believe very strongly in. So I move to approve.
And I'll second it. And just as a comment, it's, as the county manager mentioned, the devil's in the details. We have general policies, but once we have the opportunity to actually read these things, we can get behind something. And I think it's a good idea for us to read these and know what we're getting behind, as opposed to something that there's many times that the title can be not so aligned. So thank you.
Fully agree.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Hanson, a second by Commissioner Green. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've endorsed that one. Let's move on to the next one, Jacqueline.
And so, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the next is Local Solar Access Fund, House Bill 108. And again, this would increase the access needed to reach net zero emission goals as outlined in the Governor's Executive Order 2019-003. And we are in support of this bill as well because it does increase access specifically for low income households as well as rural areas. It's a real focus in those key demographics and populations. So we support it, and if you would like more details, it really just it means that anyone can apply for a local solar program. And if you're a government, if you're a tribal group or organization that is nonprofit, is my understanding, and the administrative costs go to help fund various loan systems, as well as a percentage of low-income households, which would be required. And since buildings are almost half of the emissions, or resulting from almost half of the emissions within the county, it's our recommendation that we approve this one as well.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you very much. Yes, I've often thought that if we were to make a rule or an ordinance that every house in the county had to have solar on it, we might not need large facilities. A utility scale, just a thought. But also, like, will the Climate Investment Center that the coalition has been supporting, would this be a mechanism to help fund this?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I'm assuming so, but then,
right.
That's a question, a detailed question I have not asked the coalition. I do know the coalition is in favor of this bill,
Yeah, I know
but that's a great question. How would that interplay?
Yeah, because that is part of the idea of the Coalition of Sustainable Communities, and the New Mexico Climate Investment Center is to begin to fund, these low-income projects and for sustainability. So I think this is great.
Commissioner Hamilton has a question.
Yes, thank you. For clarity, this is not directly funding low-income individuals or households. This is funding entities like local governments and whatnot to set up programs
Correct.
that would subsequently. Okay.
Correct. And with a requirement to focus on rural and low-income households.
Okay.
That's why, Mr. Chair, that's why it seemed to me that the Climate Investment Center would be like a really good mechanism to fund something like this.
Right.
It doesn't otherwise specify the funding.
It just states fund. In
Yeah, I
very
believe it
general
says it
terms.
funds counties and municipalities mainly.
But there is funding designated for this. Isn't an unfunded.
$110 million.
Yes, there's the amount.
I'm
is
110.
110 million, right?
And Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacqueline, do you have an idea how you would spend this money if you were given your allotment? I mean, is there a program that you also wish you had funding for, and this is just going to enable this?
Well, Commissioner, if I were to use a fund such as this, I would really focus, being a homeowner of a fixer-upper with incredible electrical panel upgrade needs and all kinds of stuff before I can even move into the solar world, I would like to see some attention to that side of the areas that are needed before you can start installing PV, because we have so many buildings that are not very well maintained and are, the panels are from the 90s or the 80s, and it's so, I think that that's something that really needs to be addressed, because many would love to move into the solar world and use that renewable source, but if your basics aren't set up, then it's not possible.
Thank you. As you read this, do you think that that is an eligible use of this, or is that something that we would need to ask that sort of use and recognition that panel upgrades are the first step towards being able to adopt this, or at least including that as part of, like, Santa Fe County has a program to help people upgrade their panel if they.
Commissioner, Mr. Chair, it states solar energy systems, so it really depends upon the definition of if they're including electrical panel upgrades, if they're including reinforcement of roofs. I mean, those are all very important details.
Right, and I know that reinforcing roofs is eligible for the federal rebates. Is panel upgrades eligible for that as well?
The panel upgrades are federally eligible. I think it's $2,000, if I'm remembering correctly. But they're running about 6,000. I can speak from personal experience.
They're only giving you 30% anyway, so maybe it's 2,000 of 6,000 is your 30%. So, thank you, Jacqueline.
Commissioner
Chair,
Hamilton.
if I could, I'm sorry to jump in. I think this fund, as I read it at least, is fairly targeted, and the proviso is on page 2 of the bill that the solar energy systems, have to be used to power buildings and infrastructure located within New Mexico that are owned and operated by an eligible entity. So this really isn't direct grant funding for household adoption of solar. It will be coming forward to the board in the first part of the current calendar year, but our community development department, of which sustainability is obviously a part, is working on a revamped and broadened form of affordable housing grant program that is specific to affordable owners of affordable homes, so income eligible individuals that would be able to assist with a variety of energy efficiency and other upgrades, as well as looking at potential contamination of domestic drinking water, what have you. So it'll be a very large program in terms of eligible expenditures, and that may be an opportune time for the board to look at potentially allocating resources specifically for low-income homeowners. So,
Go ahead, Commissioner Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That actually makes a lot of sense to me, because what I was just going to ask was how they're getting around the anti-donation thing, and so that it is because it is not for individuals, and so which is fine. This is needed as well. I'm not sure how it makes it strongly applicable to low income, unless you're focusing on low income, county-owned or whatever low-income housing. or low-income service buildings, like medical facilities or whatnot. So, but that's, it's got to be worthwhile in general. But I just want to mention that makes the program that the managers just mentioned, that Director Barela is working on, even more important in our county.
Commissioners, so it's also my understanding that the grants, this fund is for grants that would go to organizations, but those organizations could be, if they're public like us, we could have a building that we install PV in, and I'm not sure how the anti-donation clause is.
Well, if it's a county building, there's no anti-donation. It can't be an individual's home, because that would be counter to anti-donation. Obviously, there are some ways to get around it, but in this other program, that's not the topic of discussion right now.
Well, Commissioner, if it's low-income housing, then that's another route around the anti-donation.
Right. The facility. Yeah. Right. Good point.
Yeah.
And I did mention. Yeah.
That's fine.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. So when I installed solar on my house that was built in the late 40s, I obviously had to have a upgrade. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. So that was kind of part of the package. And so I think that if we need to be lobbying about this, I think we need to be lobbying, saying part of the package for these solar upgrade, for putting solar on individual homes, has to include this, so electrical upgrade to the panels. I mean, and many of the houses in Santa Fe County and city are built in the 40s and the 50s and 60s and even way before that, for sure. So, and I do think that we can get around this because it's low income, because of the anti-donation clause and because of some of the work that Speaker Egoff did on that, and the previous bills that he brought forward, and plus also the affordable housing of our own housing department.
Thank you, but my understanding is this particular bill is not for individual homes, it's for county-owned buildings and such. Okay.
County-owned buildings could still probably use electrical panel upgrades.
Oh, of course. Yes, I'm sure there are some.
And Mr. Chair, the grants would have to be used by organizations, and there would be a requirement to service low-income households through those grants. So it's still reaching the individual homeowner, but in a roundabout path.
Okay. Commissioner Green, did you have a comment?
Just as a clarification, and maybe we should actually make sure that I'm not wrong in this, but I know that the anti-donation clause was changed recently to allow for utility upgrades. And so I think somebody could make a pretty strong argument that adding solar to somebody's house would be eligible to some utility upgrade. So it would be great for us to actually get a legal recommendation on how far we could push this, so that maybe we could go get money and filter it through us to individual homeowners on, that doesn't interfere with the anti-donation clause.
Yeah, thank you. And it sounds like that's what our community development department is going to bring forward to us, is a program that does that. So.
Sorry, my microphone's on. I move to approve House Bill 108.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, a second by Commissioner Green. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've endorsed that one. And I believe that takes us back to Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second bill that I will be speaking to today is Senate Bill 7, And to Commissioner Hansen's earlier point, a previous BCC resolution did request adequate funding for the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund, but the specifics of this bill, as proposed by Senator Rodriguez, would be to appropriate $500 million to the New Mexico Housing Trust Fund. So just for general background, the trust fund is a critical financing instrument for affordable housing projects within the state that provides low-interest loans that are primarily used as a source of gap financing. And those loans range between $2 million and $3 million, depending on the type of loan. From a staff perspective, we certainly support this. Housing investment is critical, and this would be the single largest appropriation in the fund for quite some time. If staff would make any suggestions as far as changes, it wouldn't be necessarily in relation to the appropriation bill, but more of an administrative rule in terms of the maximum amount of funding eligible for any particular project. There had been some discussions, and we certainly had some direct experience with this with Nueva Sequia, where even if we combined all of these sources of gap financing together, it was still short of bringing the project to fruition. Now, I understand that's not going to be the case for any project where, the trust fund would be a source to fund, 40 or 30% of a project, but some variation to account for overall project costs would be good. But it is also my understanding that those discussions are being had and those changes are in the works from the administrative perspective of the fund. So with that, I think staff's recommendation would be to support SB 7 as it is in alignment with previous requests made from the board.
Thank you. Are there questions? Commissioner Hamilton?
Are you following, you say you understand some of these administrative changes that you're thinking of are like under discussion someplace. Are you following those? Do you feel like there's a possibility to influence them in the desired direction?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hamilton, and my knowledge of that comes in some discussions with people who sit on the trust board, that those discussions are happening now. From a practical perspective, given current award amounts, maximum award amounts, if this allocation was provided, that's anywhere between 166 and 250 projects that could be funded. So solely from an administrative perspective, it's not likely that you're going to have 166 to 250 projects to fund. So short of making adjustments to how much money is allocated per project, it would be very difficult to get all of this money out the door in any reasonable amount of time.
Which sounds good. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. I attended the hearing where this was heard in the Senate yesterday, and it did pass its first committee. However, Senator Rodriguez said she does not expect to get the whole $500 million. She expects to get something less, unfortunately. Housing is now so expensive that we could actually, I'm sure, easily spend the $500 million and still have a need for more affordable housing. But
sure.
It does sound like there will be some great increase over what has happened in previous times.
And did you say it did pass the first committee or did not?
It did.
Okay, it did.
It did. Yeah, it was Health and Public Affairs, which is an easy committee. They pass it on to the Finance Committee, which does the hard work of figuring out which of all these things we want money for they're gonna fund.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move to support this.
Thank you.
Second.
Who did the second?
Did.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Hamilton, a second by Commissioner Green. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we've endorsed that one. Thank you, Jordan, very much. And we're back to Jacqueline.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the next bill is Senate Bill 8, which is an EV tax credit and EV charging infrastructure tax credit as well. This bill would allow for a credit of the amount of up to $3,250 or $3,250 and a unit credit for EV charging units of $300. And again, we're in favor of incentivizing EV ownership as much as possible. If I were to change this one in particular, I would add language around encouraging used vehicles also, because the majority of vehicles that are purchased are used. And so I think it's like 80%. So it definitely feels like it's missing a mark here. Even if it's a reduced tax credit, that would be a change I would recommend. Otherwise, the staff, we support it. It is also supported by the Coalition of County Commissioners as well.
Commissioner Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jacqueline. I too am in general in support of this. I am on my 7th or 8th electric vehicle, both for my personal use and for my business use. And so one of my questions has to do with, I've discovered that in most cases, if you buy them for corporate use, there's no tax credit. And I'm wondering if there's a inclusion of fleet vehicles for companies to do the right thing, right? And so I would also recommend that we ask for an amendment to include not only used vehicles, but also commercial vehicles. Because I don't buy new cars anyway, so even for myself. So used cars are definitely, if you're going to work on a sustainability goal, used is recycling. So that's the first step of reduce your use. I'd make a motion with those two caveats to support your caveat for used vehicles, as well as to see if we would have amenability to including fleet vehicles for commercial entities.
I'll second that under discussion.
And I have questions as well, but Commissioner Hanson, did you have a discussion?
Yes. This looks like it's brought forward by Bill Talman. Are there any other sponsors at the moment, and has this had any hearings?
I wanted to call you Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Well,
I'll get used to the rotating merry-go-round.
Commissioner, I did not see that it had a hearing. I have to admit, I was flying through all of this, trying to get it done, so I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, so I think it would be good to know if there's, when it's going to be heard in the House or Senate. Isn't Talman a senator? So, and some attend the hearing when this bill is read so that we can suggest these amendments. I mean, it's nice for us to sit up here on the dais and say, yeah, this is a good idea. But unless we show up in the hearing room, or unless our lobbyist or Hutch or somebody else also stands up in the hearing room and says these things, they're not going to know that. And I mean, we can always go to his office and hopefully catch him. But I find it a valuable thing to be in the hearing, and I've had bills changed from being in a hearing room, by another senator, or, when I was the chair of the acupuncture board, I killed a whole bill. So I do think it has validity in that regard, and I think the more electrical vehicles we get on the road, commercial, or to incentivize commercial industry and used. I mean, that's probably the only thing I could ever afford is a used electrical vehicle, to be honest, So that's all I have to say on that.
And I just have a quick question. Does this credit, does it have the same restrictions as the federal one, where all the parts have to be made in America in a certain way, and so there's only 3 or 4 cars that qualify, or does this really work for just about any electric car?
Mr. Chair, it really doesn't, from what I've seen, it does not go into that level of detail. It describes an electric vehicle, which is new and registered or purchased in New Mexico, derives all of or part of its power from electricity stored in the battery. And I don't see that there are any other restrictions.
Okay, well, at least it's a little broader. And I'm counting on this in case I decide to buy a new electric vehicle. But I would much rather buy a used one, so I certainly support that part. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've endorsed that one.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the last bill I have to present is Senate Bill 79, and that is for a study. It's a working group for education and food waste diversion feasibility for a program statewide, and it would be a statewide composting program, and it is a relatively small amount of money, $65,000, and again, we are in full support, staff, of any type of diversion of solid waste and lowering emissions and increasing our soil health. So we're in support of this one as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, so thank you very much. I felt that we had already covered this in, you know, our big overview resolutions, but I feel so strongly about what Reunity Resource is doing, what many other people and models that we have in Santa Fe County and in the north, that the more we can emphasize the, composting programs throughout the state, the better. And so that was why I asked this to be on here, and thank you for, is there anything we need to do to this? Except for maybe ask for more money.
Commissioner, Mr. Chair, it is for a working group, so for a year, and if that money is not spent, it goes back to the GRT or back to the general fund, sorry. And so I'm not sure that there's anything more to add. I think that their goal is to create recommendations for the statewide program at the end of the year. So
what I've seen, if this is the same people, which I think it is, who worked on the soil, enhancing the soil, and right. They have a very kind of effective lobbying group and effective group of people working with them, which were quite impressive when they got the first bill through in one session, which was, you know, great. So more power to them.
Thank you. Commissioner Hamilton.
Yeah, that answered my question, actually.
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Hanson, seconded by Commissioner Hamilton. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have endorsed that one.
Thank you.
Now I think we move on to the
Before
exciting one from Manager Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, and I just wanted to acknowledge Jacqueline and Jordan, as well as others who worked to put these materials together under relatively tight deadline. So thank you for that very much, Jacqueline, Jordan, and the rest of the folks who helped. Thank you. We saved the easy stuff for last, so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 3, which are identical bills which would enact the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. It's a relatively complex bill with a lot of overlap with some existing leave programs, as well as the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. We'll start with how the leave would be funded. The leave compensation, would be funded through a payroll assessment, which would amount to 0.9% of the wages of employees that are employed by employers with 5 or more employees. That is divided initially .005 of the employee's wages paid by the employee and .004 of the employee's wages paid by the employer. If the employer is less than has less than 5 employees, at least as Jeff and I read the law, the employee would still pay into the state fund, but the employer would not. In addition, a similar assessment would be made against self-employed individuals based upon their net income. All of those assessments would go into a newly created fund in the state treasury called the Paid Family and Medical Leave Fund. Employees who had paid into the fund for at least 6 months during any employment in the 12-month period prior would be authorized to apply for leave and leave compensation of up to 12 weeks for a variety of qualifying reasons. Those reasons include family leave, medical leave, qualifying exigency leave relative to active military service, as well as safe leave related to someone who is the victim or whose family member is the victim of domestic violence, stalking, sexual assault, or abuse. The amount of leave compensation that would be available from the fund is not 100% wage replacement, but is instead the minimum wage for non-tipped state minimum wage earning employees plus 60% of the employees, 67% of the wages of the employee in excess of that minimum wage during the average weekly wages as calculated per the Act. Another important attribute of the law is that it would require an employer that has employed an employee for 90 days or more prior to the commencement of an employee's leave to restore that employee to the position held by the employee when the leave was commenced, or place the employee in a comparable position in terms of benefits, wages, and other terms and conditions of employment. So it's important to note here that this section of the law uses the phrase defined term employer, which is defined as a person that has one or more employees within the state. So again, as we read it at least, the job restoration benefits that would be available under the law would be extended to eligible employees who are employed by an employer that has 1 to 4 employees. There's a section of the law that prohibits an employer from requiring an employee to exhaust any other leave entitlements prior to granting leave pursuant to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. That relates to a big component of the bills, which is that an employer who has adopted and operates a paid family and medical leave plan or program that provides substantially similar or greater leave and leave compensation as is required by the proposed act can apply for a waiver. The program in total would be administered by the Workforce Solutions Department, which would have a variety of responsibilities, including processing applications submitted by employees for leave compensation, granting waivers to employers with substantially similar programs, hearing appeals, and taking enforcement action. As I mentioned, this bill, if enacted, would be similar to, but would be different from the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993 in certain respects. And we wanted to highlight a few of what we thought were the significant differences between the two. First, leave under the FMLA is unpaid. So in other words, there's no requirement that employers provide paid leave under the FMLA, though employers can, and the county does, require employees to utilize accrued leave while they're on approved FMLA. The FMLA only applies to private employers if they have 50 or more employees. And the FMLA generally provides leave for the serious health condition of the employee and the employee's spouse, child, and parents, as well as for childbirth and adoption. And then there is, I believe, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, some additional leave for qualifying military-related exigencies. But as it relates to the serious health condition leave, the FMLA is limited generally to the employee's spouse, child, and parents. And under the proposed state law, the definition of family for whom an employee may take family leave includes grandparents, grandchildren, domestic partners and their children, siblings, and any other individual related by blood or affinity whose close association with the employee or employee's spouse or domestic partner is the equivalent of a family relationship. Under the FMLA, to be eligible for the leave, in addition to being employed by an employer who has 50 or more employees, the employee has to work for the employer for a year and then also have 1,250 service hours during the 12-month period that is being looked at. So again, that's a high-level summary of the proposed bill, and also some information as to how it lines up with the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. Before I move on to talk about where staff focus was, I would just emphasize that I think it's important on the policy side, as the board thinks about the bill, to focus on two things. One is how the leave compensation is funded, which is again through a payroll assessment. And then the second part of it again is the job restoration component of it. Those are two very different ideas. And you want to, in my view, think about how they work vis-a-vis employers of different sizes. But again, those are two different ideas with two potential different impacts that are worthy of consideration. So at the staff level, what we really focused on thus far were the waiver provisions. And in particular, we looked at it from the perspective of, if this were to become law and the county was looking at how we could comply with the law in a way that recognizes the value of our existing leave programs, what would that begin to look like? And the reasons that our mind went there is because from the perspective of the county as an organization and our employees as a group, the cost of the payroll assessment is not insubstantial. We estimated that it would be approximately $500,000 per year on a recurring basis. Again, not knowing what the future assessments might look like, the law sets them, as I indicated, initially at 0.5% to the employee, so that's coming out of the employee's wages, and 0.4% to Santa Fe County. So we just applied those percentages to our total gross wages that we actually paid our employees in 2023 to come up with that estimate. For the Santa Fe County employees, that amounts to $277,000, $937.70 if you go out to the cents. So again, those would be deductions from our employees' gross wages that would be remitted to the state fund. From the county side, it would amount to $222,350. So, that's not insignificant money relative to the cost of the program. When you break it down to the individual employee level, we estimate that the cost on an annual basis to employees is $125 annually per $25,000 in gross wages. So again, if you earn $25,000, it would cost you out of pocket $125 as an employee. If you made $50,000, it would be $50,000. It would be $250. So that's on the cost side. The waiver provisions themselves, the law didn't provide a whole lot of guidance as we read it relative to what would be considered and what would be potentially disqualifying in terms of an employer-provided leave program. And in particular, we were stuck with the provision in the law that says an employer cannot require an employee to exhaust any other leave entitlement prior to granting leave pursuant to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. And our concern was that if we enacted our own program and we required employees to use their own leave, as we do now for the FMLA, and provided some amount of what I call safety net leave, for lack of a better word, that our program wouldn't qualify for a waiver, and we would be in a position of being required to, again, on a recurring basis, pay to the state $222,000, and our employees would be required to contribute to that as well. And I want to put that concept a little bit into focus. As you know from the employee calendar that we recently approved at the end of last year, we have fairly significant leave benefit programs. And they only get more generous, right, as you're more tenured with the county. We estimated for AFSCME 1782 employees as well as our non-union workforce, after 3 years of employment with the county, you would have in that period of time accrued 240 hours of sick leave, 320 hours of annual leave, and 2 personal leave holiday days. So the magic number you're looking for, right, is 480 hours. 12 weeks times 40 hours a week. If you have 480 hours of accumulated leave and you needed to take leave for the birth of a child, we already provide you with 12 hours of paid leave. And it's paid for by virtue of the fact that
12 weeks.
12 weeks, excuse me. I misspoke. Thank you, Commissioner. 12 weeks of paid leave, it's paid for via your accrued leave and your accrued leave balances. So when we thought about what a program could look like at the county level, we would want to be able to continue with the practice of requiring employees to use their accrued leave. That's a benefit that's very significant that we provide to county employees, and look to make up any shortfall either for new employees who haven't had an occasion to accumulate those leave balances, or tenured employees who maybe are low on their leave balances because they've had to use their leave for medical purposes, what have you, so that they could have a safety net that, again, approximates what the state would have on offer, but it wouldn't cost the employee anything, and it also wouldn't require the county to pay into the state fund. So that's, again, would all be subject to Board of County Commissioners' approval, but as written, our fear is that the law doesn't allow for that. And because we would be proposing a program that requires county employees to utilize their accumulated leave, that it would be dead on arrival when we proposed it. And as a consequence, both the county as an organization and county employees would be forced to pay into the state fund. And I believe, that our resources could be better deployed, towards other needs, whether that's additional FTE, salary raises, what have you. So we did write to one of the sponsors of the legislation, Representative Christine Chandler, who had spoken to county managers in early January about the proposed bill. And we made some suggested revisions or suggested some revisions that would accommodate the type of program that I just described, which again would meet the objectives of the bill of providing employees with up to 12 weeks of paid leave, but allow us to utilize and recognize the value of our existing leave accrual and benefit programs. In doing so, I made it very clear that these were just staff level suggestions and didn't represent a formal position by the Board of County Commissioners, but we did want to at least start the dialogue as to how the waiver provisions might be able to be refined in a way that would allow for the program I described, but also, frankly, be consistent with the FMLA. So, in other words, you know, there are a variety of things that are well established under federal law that aren't really addressed in the bill. So, you know, is it a calendar year basis that you look at your leave entitlement, or is it a rolling 12 weeks so that you're looking backwards? You know, under the federal law, the employer has the ability to make that election. So in our proposed language, we just said we want to be able to do the same, so that again, we have one single set of rules that you take leave for a qualifying reason. You're not protected from adverse employment consequences that would have befallen you even if you hadn't taken leave. You know, so if you know, if you engaged in egregious conduct, you know, as you know, a law enforcement officer, and that was grounds for termination, you know, you could move forward with the termination even though you had requested FMLA leave. And so those sorts of things that we thought it should be as similar as possible to the existing programs we already have under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. Again, we didn't want any such program to be disqualified from being substantially similar because those types of provisions weren't expressly authorized in the law. So that really explains the suggested changes that Jeff and I had worked on and put forward to Representative Chandler. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe I've heard back from the representative at this point, and that's really where I will end. If the board wants to support the bill, we would just respectfully suggest that, you know, we be given the leeway to advocate as it goes through the process for changes to the waiver provisions that would allow the county as well as other employers to meet the objectives of the bill, which is to, again, provide 12 weeks of paid leave at some level of pay in a way that doesn't impose a recurring expense on our employers, our employees and employers, but also that recognizes what I think is the very significant value of our existing leave programs, and the fact that, you know, many of our county employees have well in excess of 480 hours of accrued leave that they can use to meet various leave needs as contemplated under the law. So I'd be happy to answer any questions to the extent I can.
Questions? Commissioner Hanson.
When you asked Representative Chandler about, I didn't see her response to your suggestions. Did she just not respond?
You know, to the best of my knowledge, and I did try to just confirm in my email that I hadn't received a response, so I don't believe that I've received a response, and if I overlooked it, then I'll own that. But again, I have tried to check to see if there was one, and I don't recall receiving one.
Okay, so how many other counties or municipalities have the kind of paid medical family leave that we have? I mean, are we at the top end? Are we at the middle? Or, you know, like,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hanson, I would be lying if I told you I had a actually factual-based answer in terms of where we are. The important thing I would emphasize, however, is that the things that we're talking about would just allow you to potentially qualify for a waiver. It wouldn't force a county or local government in or out. It just provides more clarity from the legislature that these things wouldn't be disqualifying. And so it wouldn't be a one-size-fits-all approach. But as I indicated, my fear, and I think Jeff concurs in this, is that if we applied for a waiver under the law as written, given the express prohibition on requiring employees to use their accumulated leave, the Department of Workforce Solutions would look at that and say, no, the law says you can't do this. So there wouldn't be that flexibility.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sort of along those lines, I was wondering if maybe New Mexico counties did any analysis of this that would give some hints about whether, like what the impact would be of how many counties or municipalities or cities or whatever would be eligible to opt out of this, and whether that would, how that might hamstring the program in general. Yes, otherwise, you know, having the modifications to the exemptions makes some sense to me, and I think that would be reasonable to be able to. I mean, and I wonder if other people, other commissioners disagree. But did New Mexico counties do any analysis that would help us think about it in terms of impacts to the program compared to the reasonableness of having those exemptions from our point of view?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, if the question is the solvency of the fund and the ability of the fund to pay for leave and provide leave compensation for employees who aren't employed by an entity that was granted a waiver, I do not believe that New Mexico counties has conducted any such analysis. I'd say with respect, if that is a reason, and I'm not saying that it is, to not entertain more waiver requests that meet the intent of the law, I would respectfully suggest that the state should pay for that, not local governments and not the employees of local governments who are able to provide a program that meets the objective of the law. Obviously, the state, has a lot of funds at this point in time, and perhaps this would be a place that they could invest those to meet that overall goal of ensuring that the fund is solvent. But that would be, again, a respectful suggestion.
Right. To be honest, that makes sense to me, and I generally support this, but support, lobbying to revise some of the waiver specifications. I hate to be the stupid one asking the questions, but does this only apply to government employees?
No.
It applies to all employers, right? Because there was a size limit. I was just confirming. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Commissioner Hanson.
So on that point, I mean, I think that it's important to, for throughout the state to have a paid family medical leave plan. But I agree with Commissioner Hamilton in the fact that we need to think about our employees and why are we putting them in double jeopardy, so to speak. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is, they have to pay, if we have to abide by this rule, then they're not able to use sick leave that they've already accumulated, that they've already kind of paid for, so to speak. And they're having to pay more on top of it. And so I think that we need to speak with Representative Chandler, Senator Stewart, and make sure that they understand that we believe in that. We have a good program. We just want to be able to have a decent waiver so that our employees, not that everybody has this level of benefits. And we recognize that, and we recognize the importance of making sure that employees do have these kind of benefits, but we don't want to put our county employees or possibly city or other in a double jeopardy situation. That's how I see it as. I mean, maybe double jeopardy isn't the right word, but it's what I could come up with at the moment. Because I am in favor of this, I think it is a good thing, but I also think that if some employer is already providing sick leave that's adequate, almost more than adequate, then they should be given a waiver no matter what, not like you have to use only this program. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Commissioner Green, did you have a comment?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I am concerned about how broad this is. There was a very similar paid sick leave law that came through the legislature about 4 years ago, or maybe it's 2 years ago, but it's just coming into play in its second year right now. And it became a de facto 4% tax for all businesses in New Mexico. And these are just compounding these things and making this sort of a not so easy place to run a business and or a government, as it may be. And so I ask a question on the other side of this. Would we, if this goes into effect, would we be able to look at our benefits package and downgrade it in a way that allows us to save that equivalent in collective bargaining in a way that allows us to, hey, you've already got it through the state program, and you're paying into it, and we're paying into it. Why shouldn't we take advantage of that program in the other direction? Like just say, you know, we're going to remove these in the next collective bargaining agreement. So it isn't double dipping or double jeopardy or double whatever, right? So, I mean, it's not the most good faith effort, but it is to say, you know, the state tied our hands with this, and while we were a best practices leader on the front end of this, you know, it's costing us $250,000, so we're going to engineer our thing to make up for that a different way.
Hamilton?
My first thought about that is that some of the leave you accumulate, you could use as leave. But if you've accumulated it and you need FMLA, you can take it for that. Whereas the state program is you're only taking it for long-term, you know, medical leave, which means people who never get sick now have less vacation time or less, you know. I could be wrong on that, but that's my first response to that.
No, I just wanted to, you know, discuss that and to understand if that is, you know, if you're going to tax us and you're going to tax our employees, maybe there's a way to say, well, we're going to give you that 25 cents an hour raise, and we're going to take this away because you've earned it on this other way by the state. And just speaking out loud. You know, I also think that the restorative issue, I thank the county manager for bringing this up. You know, when you run a very small company, very small, 2, 3, 4 people, one person, one employee, and that person has to take advantage of this and take 12 weeks off. And it's almost impossible to replace that person on a temporary basis. So you're screwed, right? Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. And so I think that there should be a caveat in here to say that this should be for larger businesses. This should be for businesses of 10, 15, 20 people. I think there should also be an equivalency added to this for part-time people versus full-time people, and also that for this job restoration provision, that at least a 10-person business, you know, you can mix and match and you can backfill with somebody if you have 10 people in your company. But if you're at 5 people, you're probably stepping in to do the work yourself. And sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it's, so having more than one for sure, probably closer to 10 would be my recommendation on that. I think it's too broad. I think it's I would like to see it reined in a little bit, and as a a proof of concept over the first few years. It could be broadened out in future years, but to start, I think this is a little too broad.
Commissioner Hamilton?
A follow-up question. Do you have thoughts about where it's too broad?
You
Or
know,
that needs to be developed a little?
I
Because
think
it would
it
be
prob-
good to be able to,
to provide the language and the specifics to it. So
Right, yeah.
I think County Manager Schaefer did mention some of the, lining it up maybe with the federal thing, just as a, line it up, right? The paid time off, it was amazing. You did not have to prove illness. So this is nice. You have to prove illness and a reason to use this. But that's because it's going to ultimately be the state's money that is administering this. But in the case that they did a few years ago, you could call in and say, my neighbor needs me to take them to the doctor, and with no proof that your neighbor actually needed it, you could take 2 days off without having any support documentation, and it was literally not even family, right? It's my neighbor. My dog needs to go to the vet, or my neighbor's dog needs to go to the vet. So I'm concerned that these two broad issues, and maybe recommending that it goes to align itself with the federal regulation, and have, if you want to expand it beyond what the 50-person small business, there's very few of those in Santa Fe or in Santa Fe County, that maybe it's 10 or 15 people, that there's an expansion beyond that. But I would hope that it would be tightened up a little bit.
I have a question for Manager Schaefer just about how our program works, because at my previous employment, we did set up a paid family and medical leave program that's very similar to the county's, and was used by two people who had babies, and in their cases, they did not have quite the 12 weeks of vacation built up, but we allowed them to receive donations from other people, and I know that we occasionally get emails from about people who've run out of there. Does our program allow, like say someone has only 10 weeks of leave built up, would they be allowed to request donations of the other 2 weeks?
For existing leave entitlements, the answer is yes. Employees can solicit leave donations. In terms of new categories of potential eligible leave, that's something that we would evaluate if the law were enacted as to what we wanted our program to be. But I would imagine that leave donations would, yes, continue to be a pillar of our leave program as we attempted to come up with something that was substantially similar to what the legislature enacted as part of state policy. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, because I think in our case it worked very well. I mean, people were able to get their full pay for 12 weeks and have their baby and come back to work. And so I agree with everybody else. I agree with Commissioner Green. This is very broad and very generous program, and perhaps a little too generous. I mean, I like the idea of people saving up their leave if they're going to have a baby. And having some, as you might say, skin in the game provided that an employer provides, sick and vacation leave that can be built up. The state program, it seems, would be, for businesses that don't have that and decide, well, I'd rather just, pay the tax and let the state take care of it, and that would be an option. But it does seem like there should be lots of room for waivers for people that have programs that are working and are equivalent. And anyway, does anybody have any further discussion? Would you like to make a motion?
Well, I think that we could take many of the comments because I think that we all basically agreed with your suggestions, Manager Schaefer, and, you know, that we support staff's position and want them to negotiate with the sponsors of this bill and explain to them our concerns about our own employees, because we see that we're doing a good job, and so we want other people to do a good job, of course, but we shouldn't be punished for doing a good job.
Is that emotional?
Yeah, so I guess
So,
I'll second that.
If it, can I rephrase it for you?
you can.
I can
I'll
try.
accept.
Okay.
But you may not live through the experience.
A motion to so the motion would, as I'm hearing it, is supporting staff. A motion to support staff negotiating a refinement of this, and to bring it back to us at future meetings in the next, maybe next week, if a better solution comes forward per this county manager's recommendations of,
What they can negotiate.
what they can negotiate. So we're not in support of it yet. We are.
Can I make a?
Please,
I
yeah.
have
sure.
a question before I would second or not.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hamilton.
I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to, I'd rather word it so that you're free to support it with negotiating the changes. In other words, if they get all the changes they're asking for, they don't have to come back to us and say, well, now can we like support the bill? Does that make sense?
It does, but what are those? Pardon me, but
And
Mr.
you
Chair,
wouldn't know what the
So
specifics
we wouldn't.
are.
I mean, we have another meeting in a week, right?
have another meeting in
and
a
so
week, but-
maybe we'll
Okay,
know more
that's
about
true.
this in a week. And
That's fine.
So see what you can do in a week. and
No pressure.
yeah,
And because I think that I think everyone is well intentioned here. It's a complicated issue. It's not something like, paid family leave sounds nice, but it's the devil is in the details. And if if we're not responsible to really our employees, that's where I'm, I'm trying to benefit the employee by making sure they have paid medical family leave. But if I'm punishing them, then that just seems like, why am I doing that? Especially when we already have a good program that provides people family leave.
Mr.
Green.
Thank you. And I want to recommend that, it's great for us to look at ourselves, but we're also responsible for our community and the business owners in our community. And so, having the opportunity to talk to the Chamber of Commerce, who I know is pretty adamantly against this, and so, but to understand what would make it workable for them, right? And so, not to just blindly say, okay, the Chamber is against this, but okay, please tell us what are your issues? Maybe they match the county manager's issues, and maybe that, and then we say that should be, we're not always looking at ourselves, right? That's nice. That's probably the first place you look, but we represent a community here, and so all of these businesses, whether it's nonprofits or for-profits, big businesses, small businesses, locally owned businesses, national business, whoever wants to come to us and say, look, all good intentions, included in this works, but this doesn't, and we should get those. We should solicit that input as well.
I don't know if there's really emotion here, but
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Of all the things that we've said, we suggest you move forward.
So
I'm just going to, so the waiver, I heard clear, consensus relative to that. I believe I heard multiple people express some concern relative to the size of the employer and what job restoration leave would look like, but I don't want to state a position on behalf of the board that isn't doesn't align with a majority view. So is that something that you want us to speak to as well? That going down to somebody with just a single employer, that's going to create a potential hardship that the board's concerned about?
Yeah, but I thought this bill, I thought you said that it was 5 employees or less.
That
or
was-
5.
Just to clarify, that was on for the taxing side of it.
Oh, okay.
But for the restorative position, to give somebody their job back in their same position, it was only if there was a single employer.
That's really hard.
That's very hard.
I
That's
mean,
right.
as a small business owner myself, I mean, that would have been almost impossible.
So it sounds like we do want to address the size of the employer that's required to restore
Yeah.
a job, yes.
Well, it's,
And maybe the size of the employer that isn't required to tax their side, right? So it could be a 10-person company, and it could be a 5-person employee for the restorative, but seems to be tightened up a little bit.
yeah,
Mr.
no,
Hamilton?
I agree with that. That's fine.
Were there any other points that, Manager Schaefer, that you needed us to clarify?
And I think, as a general matter, I heard, the closer it can align to federal law, the better relative to leave administration and, potential unintended consequences. But I don't want to go down that path if that's not the view of the board.
No, I thought that was, to align it with the federal requirements made sense, the ones you specified.
That's fine with me. Anybody have an objection to having it align as closely to the federal requirements? I think we're in support of that as well.
Jeff, did you take anything else down? I think that covers it. Okay, thank you.
So is that your motion, Commissioner Hanson?
I think we've given them enough direction.
Well, I think we should have a motion then so that they can.
Okay, so I move to approve the direction that we gave them.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I think you have your direction on that. Manager Schaefer, is there something you wanted to say about House Bill 11, which is very similar?
House Bill 11 is similar, but it has some important differences as between the two. And again, I'm now contrasting House Bill 11 with House Bill 6 and Senate Bill 3, which we just talked about. Some of the significant differences are that the assessment is only applied to the employee. So employers under House Bill 11 are not required, are not assessed any contributions to the paid family and medical leave insurance fund. Secondly, the reasons why one would qualify for the leave and leave compensation under House Bill 11 are narrower, and they are for the birth of a covered employee's child, the placement of a child with the covered employee for adoption or foster care, to care for a family member of the covered employee if the family member has a serious health condition, or to recover from the covered employee's serious health condition. So if you recall from our discussion on the last bill, that list of reasons is smaller than that which is under House Bill 6. It also calculates the amount of potential compensation differently. Candidly, I'd have to work through an example to see which, if any, is more beneficial to the potential employee. That was not so much our focus. It requires that if you're going to have restoration privileges, you would have to have worked for your current employer for at least 120 days. It too has the same size issues that we were talking about, in that employer is defined as one or more employees within the state. So again, it would require a small employer to restore an employee who takes leave. The amount of leave is different in that House Bill 11 would provide up to 6 weeks of paid leave rather than 12, and as indicated, only employees would contribute to the paid family and medical leave insurance fund. And finally, the qualifying reasons for the leave are smaller, in that it would not be available for safe leave or for qualifying exigency leave, and the the family who would qualify would be broader than federal law, but I think narrower potentially than under House Bill 6, in that this bill would define family member as a spouse, domestic partner, sibling, son or daughter, grandparent, grandchild, parent, or person related to the employee by blood or affinity, whose close association with the employee shows to be the equivalent of those family relationships. So again, that definition makes it clear that the family relationship that you're trying to approximate are those that are articulated: a spouse, domestic partner, a sibling, child, grandparent, grandchild, and parent. So those would be the major things that I would highlight. Everything that we talked about relative to the waiver is generally applicable to this bill as well, and so we certainly would want to be able to make headway on seeing modifications. But as indicated, it does deviate from federal law in certain respects, and does have an impact on small employers relative to the restoration of employees who take leave.
Questions or comments? Mr. Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think a lot of the same issues come up with this one, and yet it seems like a little tighter bill. So some of the things are still a little loose, and some of the things have been defined a little better and tighter. I think I would probably lean towards this one more than the first one, but there's still some work to go in there, and so I'll let other people speak to this.
Comments? Commissioner Hamilton?
I mean, I would have the associated, the concomitant question is, are there negotiations that the county would for modifications that the county would see in its best interest that are similar to the negotiations articulated for the first bill, the previous bill?
Madam, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the turnabout is fair play. I think yes is the short answer. As we talk about leave restoration and potential impacts to smaller employers, I think that issue is exactly the same. As we talk about the waiver provisions, I think that issue is the same as well. Even though the county as an organization wouldn't be contributing, our employees would be, and so we'd want to, at least preserve the opportunity to craft a program that would be 100% county paid, and not have our employees pay into the state fund. I think there's less divergence, but there's still divergence with the federal law, and so there may be areas in which, as we start to expand into this area, having some overlap would just decrease the risk of noncompliance, but also provide a start in this area. So I hope that answers your question, and I think we'll follow, absent separate direction. If this bill is going to move forward, we'll do our best to try and influence its final contours in a way that was consistent with the previous motion.
I think that works for me. I don't like that the employer does not contribute and that they're putting everything on the employee. It seems fair if everyone contributes.
Do we need a motion on this one, or is Manager Schaefer, do you think you have enough direction?
I think we're good from the previous vote, but if you want to memorialize that in a motion, then I defer to Jeff as our parliamentarian.
One question, have you similarly talked to Matthews, Representative Matthews, about this one?
We have not. Frankly, we interfaced with Representative Chandler because she was proactive in talking to the county manager's affiliate. So we will, if that's the direction of the board, make our views known relative to this bill as well.
Sorry.
Attorney Young, should we have a vote?
So, Mr. Chair, I would defer to you as chair on this one, but but I do think a vote is fine to give same direction to the bill sponsor as was discussed in the prior bills, HB 6 and Senate Bill 3.
Okay, well, let's entertain a motion then. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to give direction to the county manager to pursue the similar recommendations as the previous motion in support of finding a workable solution to HB 11 that include aligning it with the federal law and tightening up some of the language, including some of the carve-outs.
And making sure that we have a waiver.
The carve-outs, yes. And the waiver, carve-out, yes.
Okay,
That's a friendly amendment, yes, thanks.
Is that a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we have direction on that one. I believe that moves us along on our agenda. Yes, Commissioner Green?
If I may, if it is appropriate at this time, there's the items that have or may be introduced, and so while they're not necessarily on this list, I do want to bring up some things that I've come across at the legislature that may not necessarily be directly, but do impact us. So if I may?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So the Pewaukee and Santa Fe Soil and Water Conservation District, we support them with $8,000 a year to go for their operations, barely for their maintenance. They are pursuing, if you saw in the paper last week, a $7.7 million appropriation from the legislature to fix a dam that is in Rio Arriba County. But it flows into Santa Fe County, and there are 800 residents in the Santa Cruz Valley that are considered at threat to this dam. And the proposal that they're asking for is $7.7 million of state money that would be leveraged with about $13 million of federal money that is already pretty much aligned and ready to go. The feds have already engineered and done a lot of the basic groundwork at their cost. And while this is in Rio Arriba County, this is something that impacts Santa Fe County, Chimayo, Santa Cruz, Espanola, and the Santa Clara tribal lands. And I would hope that we would give assistance to the Pewaukee, to the folks from that organization to have the maneuverability and the insight of our lobbyists to be able to call on them and say, can you help us get this over the line? Most of it will be on the fourth floor from the governor's discretionary money, but there is support from 2 legislators already, and it's a life safety issue that is not necessarily in our purview, but it is definitely, we are downhill from this. So.
So I read the article in the paper, but I don't know if we can actually vote on that because it's not on the agenda, but.
I was just about to ask Attorney Young, are we allowed to vote on anything that wasn't on the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would not, as the item is not listed. It's certainly a point of discussion, you know, as brought up by Commissioner Green, but yeah, I would not recommend voting at this time.
So if I may, it says opposition to legislation that has been or may be introduced. So the may be introduced is a title to this, and we don't have a bill number necessarily for this. I would hope that even if we don't vote on this today, that we have an opportunity to vote on this next week, one. Two, and more information about it and how we can help them. Two, at least also for next week, that we make sure that has, or may be introduced is defined as things that we bring forward at this meeting and may be introduced, right? We don't know.
Well, I think we're all in support of getting the dam fixed. I mean, it's been a problem for a long time, not just this year, and the danger is real. But let's make sure we get it on the agenda in the correct way for next week.
Wonderful, thank
I
you.
have one. Is BOR responsible for this?
It is the Soil Conservation, so it is not the BOR, it is another federal agency that actually built the dam in the 1960s, who would be putting up the 13 million of it, but the matching funds are 7.7 million, and it's not BOR, it is on BLM land, and there's some complications with that as well.
Okay.
Okay. Any other items before we move on to the county attorney? In that case, let's move on to item number 3, matters from the county attorney.
Mr. Chair, I would ask that we go into executive session, I think a brief executive session, to discuss bargaining strategy preliminary to collective bargaining negotiations between the Board of County Commissioners and collective bargaining units as allowed by Section 10-15-1H5, particularly as it relates to collective bargaining negotiations with AFSCME 1782. And again, I think it will be a brief discussion, so I'd recommend that we come back after to conclude business with announcements and adjournment.
Oh, so you recommend we do come back after the executive session? Okay. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved, and I'll second.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Anna Hamilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Justin Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Anna Hansen,
Yes.
and Chair Hank Hughes.
Yes. Okay, we'll be in executive session for a few minutes, and then we'll be back.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy. Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us. Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety. For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the Correctional Facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us. Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety. For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy.
Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army.
Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the correctional facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us. Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety. For you.
For my community.
For the public.
For the community.
For the retirement.
To serve my community.
For my family.
For the outdoors.
David Crispin with the United States Marine Corps.
Jacqueline Beam, 519th Military Intelligence, U.S. Army.
Matthew Hernandez, United States Navy.
Keith Claxton, United States Navy.
Paul Portillo, United States Navy. Robert Griego, U.S. Navy, Operations Specialist.
Chris Oakley, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, State of New Mexico Army National Guard.
Melinda Medlin, United States Army.
Norman Aragod, U.S. Army National Guard.
Raven Nieto, United States Army. Oscar Martin Lopez, United States Marine Corps.
Martin, United States Army, retired.
Valentino Baca, United States Marine Corps.
Jeff Folgate, United States Air Force.
Kenneth Quintana, United States Army, and as well as New Mexico National Guard. Combined service, 24 years.
Santa Fe County is hiring. Every Tuesday, Public Works holds a rapid hire event at 102 Grant Avenue at 8:30 a.m. Also, the correctional facility holds a rapid hire event every Tuesday at 9 a.m. That is at 28 Camino Justicia. We have great jobs, great pay, and great benefits. Come work with us. Why do you work for Santa Fe County?
For my family.
For your safety.
Presented to us by the county attorney.
And second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
Okay, I have an announcement. Today was feast day at San Ildefonso Pueblo, and it was incredibly beautiful. They did the deer dance and a form of Comanche dance, I believe. I'm not positive. But it was incredibly beautiful out there, and the sun was shining. It was warm, and we're incredibly fortunate to have such a rich cultural life here.
Indeed, we are. Any other announcements?
That's it.
Just a reminder for all of us here, in that we basically have 48 hours from right now for our capital requests to be really locked in. I recommend that we all spend a couple hours in the next few days, because after that it's only maintenance. After that, our lobbyists can really do the work. But right now, if we can go spend the time with our delegation and anybody over there that you have a relationship with, that's between now and Thursday at 5 p.m. So,
Thank you for that reminder. All right, could I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Congratulations for your first meeting.
Ditto.